Early results of Hong Kong election suggest landslide win for pro-democracy camp. Here's a live page of the results as they come in. DCE2019.thestandnews.com. The yellow squares are seats won by Pandem/pro-democracy camp. The red squares are seats won by pro-establishment/Beijing. Light grey have no results yet. Dark grey are independents. Yellow with red corner indicates that spot was flipped from pro-establishment to pro-democracy and vice versa. Currently 177 won for the Democrats and 17 for establishment. Holy shit. That's a landslide, if I've ever seen one. The repercussions are going to be very interesting. Congrats to the Democrats. Repercussions like the Chinese government conveniently ignoring the results and finding a way to insert their puppets. China's response is going to be very interesting. They've been pretty vocal in trying to intimidate governments from supporting Hong Kong. Yup. Personally, I call it bluff, so it will be interesting to see how China will react and if China is willing to accept the consequences. Well, it will also be interesting to see if other countries are willing to enact sanctions on China. I'd like to think it was me cancelling my WoW account that really did it. I was going to get Overwatch for Switch, but then I didn't, and therefore saved Hong Kong. You guys may only be semi-joking about it, but I can honestly say that for me personally, although I'm pretty confident most Hong Kongers would agree with me, that anything you do to show your support for Hong Kong is already 1000x times more appreciated than not taking any action at all, especially when it comes to not buying a game you want. Or refraining from buying something cheap and Chinese made that you would have liked. Edit, in case I haven't made it clear enough, I'm not calling them out on it. In fact, even if the only thing they did do was to cancel their WoW subscription, or didn't buy Overwatch, that is still something Hong Kongers and I appreciate. Anything is better than nothing. I'm Hooker. I'm with you. These comments or actions, even may not have any effects, are greatly appreciated. And to me, those satirical "oh thanks for your help you saved HK" comments are not really funny. Edit, some DM and Shadalban comments said my post history doesn't look like Hooker. Most hookers don't use Reddit to discuss anything related to HK, and it is the same to me. We have our own Reddit called Lig. If you want proof, this is it. Used my left hand and a folded paper. Don't take it personally, Reddit used to be a place where comments had intelligent arguments, explanations from experts their fields, serious topics were discussed and stayed on topic. Now you have to scroll through a mile of overused repetitive shit by karma whores and same age group upvoting it to the top, before you can find more informative comment chains. What does this actually mean for the people of HK? Obviously a good thing, but exactly how much of a good thing? Good for showing how much support we have, but district councillors do very little. They aren't our national legislature, and they do far less than any American state government. They get thrown a small budget to improve local affairs and advise the government. Most important roles, that the district councillors collectively get 5 over 70 seats in LegCo, our actual legislature, and 100/1,200 seats in the election committee for our chief executive. Irrelevant, the other seats are overwhelmingly pro-China and China has to approve the chief executive anyway. LegCo really sounds dystopian, kinda sounds like a corporation for legislation. It actually isn't a model made by the Chinese, it is a British colonial model which conveniently works in favor of China, so why change it? While the original model was made by Britain, they tried to change it to be more representative of the popular vote just before the handover, but China dissolved that version and set up their own just after the handover. The functional constituencies are definitely a relic of the British rule. They're basically the House of Lords, but with more power. This is great, but will the election results be considered legitimate? Will they change anything? The district councils do not have that much power, and are mainly advisory. With that in mind, Beijing will likely not do anything in order to say, look, we'll let you have a vote and we are honoring it. Next year's elections for the Legislative Council, LegCo, is the more important election as it does have power, and you can expect more interference on that election. Keep in mind that 50% of the seats in the LegCo belong to functional constituencies that represent the corporate interests of Hong Kong, but the basic law is established by the British colonial government. Beijing doesn't need to invalidate any results, so long as they get just a few seats who will vote lockstep with the FCs, who are pretty much pro-Beijing. On the same token, this is exactly the thing that landed HK and where it is now. One of the problems with regards to HK's economy, aside from CCP implementation of policies, is how singular and tied up it is to the real estate tycoons, aka the five families. So much so most industries, if not all, are now directly controlled by said families. Back in the first years of the CCP handover, Tung suggested for the formation of Cyberport, a project of grand scale that will create secondary channels of HK's income, by creating new industries as well as massive number of new jobs, one of the first to combine it in global finance. However, without going into great details, a lot of people in the LegCo rejected the idea, because they represented the interest of the families. By creating other channels of income, Tung was basically diverting away a large sum of their revenue from their real estate businesses. This, combined with the fact the company that spearheaded the project was itself the largest of the five, didn't quite help. At the end, Cyberport became a nothing. What was meant to be a nation, Silicon Valley, became mostly residential real estate. The commercial that was meant for high-end big companies became a lowly concentration of loan sharks and storage. Interesting fact, this same concept was taken to Shenzhen, and look at what it has become. I see myself as one of the protesters, and now people voted for me. They voted for protesters. That is the message. Dude is gonna disappear soon. Please don't post if you have no idea how things work in HK. He doesn't need to disappear, because district councillors are functionally powerless. And even Joshua Wong hasn't disappeared. You don't need to disappear people, if they are no threat to begin with. What about the booksellers which disappeared in HK then? Were they a threat? China beats the crap out of pro-democracy protesters. HK votes en masse for pro-democracy camp. China surprised Pikachu. Let's not hope that the next step won't be China angry China smash results. These results are meaningless. The positions in which people are allowed to vote for local council are meaningless in the grand scheme. Hong Kong will continue to be oppressed by the hand-picked non-elected ruling class. Yeah, unfortunately I can't see this election as having a meaningful impact on China's treatment of HK. I wonder how this will be reported in China mainland next morning. Likely no report at all. Such a pity that people there mostly have no idea that the majority of the HK people support the movement. I think this will be reported, but will only reinforce the view that Hong Kong has fallen victim to American and UK propaganda. From what I've heard, that's been a very common theme to current reports. The problem is the official discourse is always like majority of HK people are anti-violent and support authority and police. How could they interpret this news within this narrative? Regarding to the public discourse, I heard that it is perceived as a sign that shows HK has finally fallen to the anti-China force. I don't know, I have stopped browsing Chinese social media for quite a time. Well, I guess you can't, and I imagine that's why r/hung_kang is freaking out a bit over the news. But r/Sino seems pretty indifferent, like, oh well, that theory is debunked then, and I personally never heard that's been talking to mainland Chinese about all this. I dunno, I could be wrong. The Sino sub is giving an example of how the narrative might go, and it's really batshit insane. The top comment in the first thread about the election says this is proof that HK is independent, then literally says that now Asia would more concerned about US intervention, and then talks about how pro-dem protesters will learn about the limits of the HK government. So he says the results proves HK is still ruling itself, but then uses the same result to imply the election was meddled by the USA, and that it will also show the people how little the HK government can do. What's crazier is that he also uses Taiwan as an example of countries being more wary of the US. Taiwan, probably the most vocal anti-China international voice in all of this. He claims a new anti-fake news law is evidence, because we all know Taiwan would be more worried about propaganda from the US than, say, refer Spain. Spain's king calls independence vote by Catalonia totally outside law and democracy. First point, that referendum was illegal by the constitution, which can be considered morally wrong and even oppressive, totally unregulated and with an extremely low participation due to the nature of said referendum. Second point, even though said referendum is illegal, they have all the right in the world to demand a change in the constitution, meaning they had a totally democratic and legal way to change things, a path they would follow if they wanted to do the thing rigged without any escalation. Nonetheless, I understand the difficulty of this endeavor, but that's what is the constitution, a set of laws difficult to change. People have the right to criticize the Spanish government, constitution, and laws, but the illegality of the referendum, not immorality, is a straight cold fact whether you like it or not, and due to its unregulation it's not a trustworthy picture of the Catalonian demography. The right thing to do when a region demands autonomy is to allow them a referendum. The Spanish government is doing everything in its power to prevent one. The constitution provides a useful fig leaf, but given that the parliament could change it and allow a referendum, it seems like it's largely just an excuse to prevent an unwanted electoral outcome. The right thing to do when a region demands autonomy is to allow them a referendum. Someone shoulder told China that in 1997,